I think if you want to talk about recession nervousness, you should look at today's jobs report. Numbers like this are just very much inconsistent with any kind of a recession call.
Well, you know, we're not denying that we have work to do on inflation.
I know times are tough. Prices are too high. Families are facing the cost of living crunch. But today's economic news confirms the fact that my economic plan is moving this country in a better direction.
Let's look at the numbers. The June jobs report, 372,000 jobs added. Unemployment staying steady at 3.6%. Wages are up 5.1%, but not even close to keeping up with inflation. With that, let's bring in our panel. Ben Domenech, editor of thetransom.com and host of the Ben Domenech podcast on Fox News Radio. Leslie Marshall, Democratic strategist, and Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters. Since you're on the North Lawn, Jeff, let's start with you. The state of the American economy 4 months ahead of midterm election day.
Well, Mike, the labor market is strong, and that's certainly something that they emphasized today from the White House and from the administration. But as the president said in the clip that you played, that doesn't mean they don't think there's work to do. As we've discussed before, inflation is obviously very high, and Americans are feeling that. But the advantage, I guess, of the labor market being strong is that if there is a recession, it could mean that it would be a mild one. On the other hand, it could also will likely mean that the Fed will have a pretty hefty rate hike coming up. So there are pros and cons to that, but at least they see some glimmers of hope here today.
Leslie, you're outside the Beltway. What's the feel in terms of the American economy on the West Coast?
Well, not just on the West Coast and not just here on the left side of things with my party. People like seeing gas prices come down as they have been for days now. People like seeing unemployment low and staying steady. And people like seeing job creation and jobs report better than it's been. I'm hoping that's going to transcend to some higher approval ratings for the president, because all the American people see is doom and gloom in the headlines, especially when it comes to the words recession or inflation. That still scares them. We're not out of the scary waters yet, but this is definitely good news, and I say that as a pessimist.
Ben, solid jobs number, but inflation's pretty brutal. Your thoughts?
I think that there's very little hope for the Democratic coalition to change the narrative. As people look at the situation around the country, there's much more reason to be pessimistic in this moment than there is to be optimistic about the direction of the economy. And I don't think that you're going to see any of that change in time to further Democratic hopes in November.
Also today, the president signing an executive order on abortion. He vented his frustration with the Supreme Court. Let's play it.
The truth is, today's Supreme Court majority that is playing fast and loose with the facts. I'm asking the Justice Department that, much like they did in the civil rights era, to do something, do everything in their power to protect these women seeking to invoke their rights.
Jeff, is that just frustration from the president since he really doesn't have control over the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of frustration there because of what you just said, Mike, and broadly because he can't actually do that much with executive orders on the issue of abortion. He issued the one that you were just referring to. It does a few things. It seeks to protect access to abortions and to contraception for women, but the truth is he doesn't have that much authority to do that. That authority is now with the states.
Leslie, there have been calls from the left for the president to do something on abortion rights. Is it enough?
Well, it's not enough, but he doesn't have the power to do enough or to do more. Certainly, this is going to appease some, but it's not enough. It's very scary when you heard Kevin McCarthy yesterday, touching upon a federal ban, which we think Republicans will do if they get the House, the Senate, and the White House, not in the midterms, but in the general election. And of course, there's a concern about Republicans trying to limit the ability for women to travel interstate, even though that's currently protected. That could always be changed. Roe v. Wade was protected, and there since 1973. President's doing the best that he can. What the American people need to do if they don't like this decision is get out and vote in November and vote for people that want to protect a woman's reproductive rights.
Ben, what about that? Does that energize Democrats in November's midterm elections?
Unfortunately, virtually anybody on the Democratic side who was going to be energized by this type of rhetoric was already going to be voting anyway. This is not a situation where you're going to see some kind of explosive turnaround for them. And a big part of that has to do with the, frankly, extreme position that the Democratic Party occupies on this issue. When you're talking about a 9-month spread, when you're talking about this sort of level of support for abortion, including taxpayer funding, that's something that just has not been a major popular point for them for some time now. And I think that Joe Biden and his party are running right into the teeth of that because it turns out that Roe v. Wade, despite being framed as something that was settled and popular and the like in a lot of the media framing and the polls over the years, has not turned out to be that popular and will not turn out, from my perspective, to be something that changes the dynamic headed into the midterms.
All right. There'll be plenty more debate about this issue going into the fall, but now it's time for a moment in the show our viewers look forward to, winners and losers. Jeff, why don't you lead us off?
All right, for winners for the week, I picked John McCain, the late senator, and the other people yesterday who received the Medal of Freedom from President Biden in a very emotional and touching ceremony. And for loser of the week, Elon Musk, and very possibly the shareholders of Twitter, after he said tonight that he was pulling out of his deal to buy that social media company.
All right, Leslie, your turn.
I'm going to go loser first. Marjorie Taylor Greene for once again being insensitive to victims and victims' families when she is alluding to the Highland Park shooting as being a false flag. And winners, well, I'm going to say my state and the governor of my state, Gavin Newsom, is going to make insulin affordable to those who need it.
All right, Ben, bring us home.
Boris Johnson is my loser for this week. Really a disappointment in terms of his tenure as prime minister, though it is rather ridiculous, as Macaulay told us, to see the British people go through a moralistic fit now and then. And then my winner for the week is actually Flo Rida and the folks at Fox and Friends this morning put on an incredible performance and included a wonderful image of Steve Doocy dancing along to this. It was just a good enjoyable way to end what has been a tough week.
Panel, thanks so much. Have a beautiful weekend.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.